Hi everyone, welcome to North and South Podcasts. This is Tim speaking. This is a well-being podcast, amongst many other things. And today it's an honour to be speaking to Alex. Alex is a friend of Ewan who was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And Ewan was talking about men's place in the world and some of the issues affecting men and their role in the world. And Alex is going to talk about something a little bit different, but it's kind of linked to that as well, because Alex is going to tell us about psychedelics, which is a little bit of a taboo issue at the moment. Well, has been for some time. And some of the expertise and the things he's heard and learned in that field in recent years. We're going to find out about his story as well. But before we do start, just a little disclaimer. Me and Alex are not medical experts and are not advocating anyone to do it and we talk about in this podcast. This is just our personal experiences. And anything you do should be in consultation with your doctor or a qualified medical professional. I feel like one of them people who reads the small print here on the phone when they just missold you something. Alex, how are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I love that introduction. I'm definitely not a doctor and I wouldn't recommend anyone becoming one either.
Good stuff. So, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself then? What are you kind of into and how did you get down this journey of researching psychedelics?
Yeah, I love these introduction questions. It's like creates a moment of introspection because like who I think I am on a foundational level is someone who likes to experience life. I'm a very curious person, so I am experiential. I have weaved my way through life, bumping into different things and then finding solutions for mending the damage from the bumps. I class myself as a veteran, military veteran, spent 10 years in the military, left the service injured with PTSD, found myself in addiction, alcoholism, and then ended up in rehab. And then I found myself into recovery groups such as AA, CA, and then left those groups after I discovered plant medicines. And we can talk about plant medicines, and it's essentially discovering nature, which is the fundamental of us human beings. When we're connected to the outdoors, we're connected to ourselves, and people feel better in the outdoors just because we're essentially at home. Like I think I'm a philosophical person, like to understand life, understand people and conversations, and don't really oppose many things except for stuff that is really outright, you know what I mean, wrong and, in the world. But you know what I mean, I don't oppose people's views, or even if I do, like I don't outwardly project them. I just consider them and think, you know, there's obviously a reason for that point of view. But I don't it doesn't create any tension or arguments in my life. I like to be quite neutral, but just have my own views and my own point of view on things.
It sounds like you've been on quite a journey there in a number of different things and you've experienced a number of different things. And I've spoken to a few people with military experience who suffered from PTSD. And I actually did some work experience in the army a few years ago. And I mentioned PTSD to a few of the people we were working with. And it seemed to be like a few of them were like, oh, yeah, that's never affected me. You know, I'm okay. And you still think there's a little bit of an attitude of that in the military, that there's a little bit of shame maybe in admitting that you've had PTSD. Is that something that you've experienced in the military?
So as a soldier, you work from the neck up,
Yeah.
not acknowledging emotional states or not acknowledging grief, not acknowledging your shame or guilt or different things. Really, we operate from a strategic point of view all the time. And to drop into a heart space would almost create a weakness, really, in you as a soldier, because you have to be solid as an operator. And when you come back, then you can't just drop out of that mental space. You try and operate in there all the time, and a lot of problems are created from the mind level. So it's hard to create a problem from where the problem was created initially. When I went through different phases of my life, I found it hard to say that I had post-traumatic stress disorder, or found it hard to say that I had addiction issues, found it hard to say that I was an addict or depressed or anxious. And it's conditioning based on our society and based on the conditioning as a soldier that is designed that way. So they create strategic fighters.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, because I think it's a bit of a male thing as well, that men don't like to discuss emotions. And I think that when you get men among men in particular, like male-only environments, I think it makes it even more difficult to get those things out in the open. I think what you said about nature as well, that I don't know if you've seen that documentary that Al Gore did, An Inconvenient Truth, where at the start it shows a lovely scene by a river, and he goes, sometimes you go out into nature and you just go, oh, I forgot about this. It doesn't matter how many times you've been out in it, you get out there and there's a connection that you feel that somehow being in the city and cooped up all the time doesn't quite get. You don't quite get that in an urban environment the way you do in nature. And I think tapping into that is very, very important. How does that link into plant-assisted therapy then? And what exactly is plant-assisted therapy?
Before I answer that question, when you were speaking there, what rose up in me was the fact that, do you know, when people live in the city and they live in nature, I've never heard someone come back from somewhere and say, you know what, I had too much nature. I've got too much nature going on. Or what's wrong with you? You're not feeling that great. Oh, you know what, mate? I just had too much nature this weekend. Really finding it difficult to deal with. But it's like the opposite is I live in an urban area. I live in the city. London, for example. People get limitations on how much time they can sort of spend in these environments, and then they're in nature because they're trying to recover from being in the city. So it's like, if you are never in a state of complaint or state of grief or suffering when you're in nature, it's because that's your organically the correct environment for you as a human being. And naturally, following on to your original question, like plant-assisted therapy, it's like we are beings of plants, of nature. We are all connected in the world, and each plant has got its own purpose for assisting in a different way. And the research, all pharmaceuticals are based on something that a plant offers this world. So they've taken a plant, made it into a pharmaceutical, patented, sellable product, and it's just all they've done is taken a homeopathic, God-given, natural thing on Earth that exists for like whatever, like a mushroom or a certain tree or a bark or a plant or a fruit, maybe. They've all got a purpose. Like every person on this earth has got a purpose, whether they believe that or not. The more time you spend looking into yourself, the more you can realize that purpose. And sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't, and plants can help you visualize and feel that purpose, full fulfillment in just being on earth, I guess. And another thing that plants do, apart from help you heal, is they show you that you've got a lot of meaning and value as a human being, and they allow you to feel that state of value without having to offer anything. Just to be here and arrive on earth as a human, you just feel like I'm so valuable just for being here, just because I have an opinion, I have a state of consciousness. I can walk around and I've got the freedom to do anything and what I want, really. I think we're the only species that has a conscious ability to select our destiny, really. Like, I know that's limited to people's situations, but we have the unique ability to select where we want to be, what we want to do, everything, really. Not immediately for some people, like, is a caveat, isn't it? Like, how abundant am I in this moment? How much trauma have I got in this moment? How self-sufficient am I? How autonomous am I in this moment? But you can always decide right now. I mean, you could decide, I'm going to do something tomorrow to change my experience in life. I'm going to change my reality. What am I going to do? Right. I'm going to join a men's circle to deal with my emotional outbursts, my anger. I'm going to have a conversation with my partner because I feel like our relationship could be better. Do all these things that people ignore in life, not because they want to ignore them, because they feel that they can't acknowledge them because it's painful. And some people are in relationships where they're not used to communicating, or they're in family dynamics where communications is never encouraged. So people don't feel like they can have them conversations. And then naturally, that leads us to live in this condition of, I can't talk to anyone. But that's a state of mind. You can talk to everyone. We have the ability to communicate with our sign language, just saying to someone, I'm not okay. That's a form of communication. Just even sitting there and not saying nothing is a form of communication. Just being quiet. If someone recognizes that piece and or not even peace. Someone recognizes that silence. It could be a cry for help,
I
Yeah.
think that the natural environment as well. I remember, that with the Romantic movement, like Rousseau wrote about the reveries of the solitary walker in the 18th century, about getting away from urbanization in the city, etc. Which isn't to say that we want to go back to like some state of nature, but if you think about all the medicines that we use, even some of the big breakthroughs with treating tuberculosis, it just came from like people identifying things in nature. Antibiotics are like a huge breakthrough. Now, when it comes to psychedelics, they're a particular type of plant, and this is something that affects how the mind views the world. So when you mention there about plants changing the way that you view the world, what kind of substances are you referring to? What are the common ones that people in this kind of field would mention?
I think psilocybin, so mushroom-based plant medicines, I think they are at the forefront of the moment. There's other ones, but I just think we'll just highlight psilocybin. So they took psilocybin to a palliative care ward, end of life care, and they give 10 people who'd never experienced psilocybin before a dose of psilocybin which is high enough to affect their perception of reality. And every single one of them said they wish they'd done it earlier on in their life, and they changed their view and their perception of reality, and they felt a higher sense of well-being. They felt more connected to themselves and their outer reality. They felt more love for the thought and the incoming sort of death that they were going to experience. He felt more comfortable with that. So if you can sit with that thought, to be like, these people are on a ward, potentially in fear that they're going to pass away, and then they get given this little mushroom in a powder form, I imagine, and then it changes their whole exit strategy from the world.
Mm.
It's just, I think it's like a beautiful thing, and it should be welcomed, and everyone should be cautious and do their due diligence around these things, because that's our nature is to protect ourselves.
Mm.
So it just shows that we have caution, and we do care about our safety.
Mm.
If we are investigating, like, is this going to kill me? Is this going to hurt me? Is this going to affect my life? I just think I think that's good to be in that way, that state of mind, but don't let it control all your experiences,
Mm.
because all you do then is learn more about that plant, that medicine, the experience. Like, for example, when I started meditating, this is a little bit of a different comparison. I started trying to meditate and I couldn't sit still for maybe a minute or two. And I thought, like, this is not working. I just don't gain anything from this. It's making me feel more frustrated than I already am. So then I read people's testimonials online about meditation. I thought, if all these people are saying this, it's got to be something true about it. So then it gave me the encouragement to go back into states of meditation and like prolong that fight against myself trying to break away from the silence.
Mm.
So I just feel that because I've learned other people who are doing it, when investigating myself, found the benefits, then I practice it myself. And then that process is something I always go through with different experiences that I think that would be good for me.
We all know about like the war on drugs and the reaction to the 60s from like Richard Nixon and even Reagan in the 80s, which was kind of mirrored on this side of the pond as well, whereby all kind of psychedelic drugs that transformed the perceptions of the mind were frowned upon as being part of the hippie movement, the counterculture. And there was some very strict punishments dished out. There was reactions against like Timothy Leary and the kind of hippie experiments of the 60s. And we're still very much dealing with the legacy of that, even in the police responses to things, because the police are expected to do things about drug taking, and sometimes people who are found at relatively small levels of drugs can be heavily criminalized, about the United States penal system, etc. And is there any evidence that in some parts of the world people are moving beyond that, or psychedelics are more accepted?
Yeah, I definitely think that from a tribal perspective, like, the world's acknowledging ayahuasca. There's documentaries now. There's charities, heroic arts are dealing with ayahuasca and veterans, and they, do you know what I mean? The military is a very political and patriarchal sort of faction. Does a lot of bidding, doesn't it, on a political level? And then to combine them two is almost something is unheard of, really, in recent times. And the US is acknowledging it. They legalize cannabis, but I guess that's recreationally. I think that it can cause a lot of issues smoking it, but I think taking it medicinally through your skin, applying it through your skin and eating it medicinally, I think it does have massive benefit. And you can see the videos of people recovering from fits and seizures through application to the skin. That's like the first step, I think, was bumping the cannabis online. And then the psilocybin is legal in different parts of the world now. And it's just going to continue from there, really. And then you've got, like in America, you've got religious churches that use DMT part of ceremonial experiences. And you've got different churches which are linked to like indigenous people, and they practice plant medicine ceremonies, and they use sound healing, so play music, singing song called song carrying, where you sing a song from your ancestral lineage, worshipping and giving thanks really to the earth and to people. You know, it's like very tribal and very like indigenous sort of way of living. But sound has always been there, light's always been there, so people revert back to that for healing. So like, how can I heal? Right, I'm going to go to a sound healing ceremony, I'm going to work with plants, I'm going to be in the sun. It's like all these are like the most simplest things really lead to the most profound changes in us, from a state of consciousness and a state of body and mind. Yeah, it's like we've complicated everything we do. We've just through a lens of complication, and everything is simple. It's baffling how humans create such complication with their ecosystem. Everything is twice as difficult as it should be, really. And it's made to be that way, really, because it funnels people through different avenues that you need to get them through, like for the economy and different trades and all different things, really, which probably may not exist if there was real knowledge released in the world. Do you know what I mean? There's always hidden knowledge, isn't there? Everything's hidden. There's groups and people who know things, and there's like a sort of general population element of the world, isn't it? Like general civ pop, the civilian population, the people who just not extremely wealthy people. They don't have much political power. They were just like, they're not like people like me and you. We just like live in here. We're not like making decisions based on world trade or world politics or world governance. Not these types of people who are obviously privy to different things, different knowledge bases, isn't it? Like energy, different pharmaceutical, different like homeopathic medicines, which actually do certain things that we are maybe censored from, because it's economical, isn't it? Based on an economy system, which is it's just an illusionary. It's just we create a value based on what we think is valuable. So you can't really do that with plants, can you? Because they grow everywhere. What's the value of this tree in pounds or in gold or anything like that? It's just like commodity is put into a monetary system just for people's benefit, really. Sort of for benefit of people's lining the pockets currently in a state of economic crisis, because we all care about money more than we care about the world.
It's interesting as well that, you know, when you look at one of the key reasons for the lack of investigation into this is there's a lot of bureaucratic resistance, because giving people antidepressants, antipsychotics or whatever, they have to take them every day. And we know that for certain treatments of rare conditions, the pharmaceuticals don't like it because they can't guarantee revenue. I think I read recently it can take like 10 years and billions of pounds before something is on the market, and they're very reluctant to change what earns them lots of money. There's a great documentary called Dope Sick about how OxyContin was used and how the pharmaceuticals bent the rules in the United States. It's well worth watching. Now, some of the things you mentioned, DMT, psilocybin, ayahuasca, they're becoming more common parlance. And I've listened to a lot of podcasts with people who've either had psychedelics for breakthrough moments, and then that's affected the way they view the rest of their lives. There's also something called like microdosing, which is where you take small quantities, etc. things. But then there's the belief that you can have a heavy dose, which can help you to have a big breakthrough kind of moment. Is that a good summary of things? And have you got any comments on any of that?
Yeah. It's a really good summary. I think macrodoses allow for large shifts in perception. From my personal experience, microdosing is almost allows you to experience little bits of the medicine, but not overwhelming large shifts. And then you can integrate them little bits into your life, into your day. So, for example, when I microdosed previously, I sort of like unlock emotional aspects of myself within the day, or maybe I could access grief that I couldn't access before, access like a state of emotion which was shut off previously. And then all that does then is like lightens your load. It's like having a rucksack on your back, and then when you're microdosing, the stones fall out a little bit quicker. And I know like what happens in day-to-day life. Someone's putting a couple of stones in there, and then I'm not saying that we get to a point where there's no stones in our bag, but that is possible, a state of being where you live in a complete state of balance and a state of like peace with yourself and with your life. But the microdosing and the macrodosing allows you to get there a little bit quicker. And I would also caveat that and say you should look for support if you're doing these macro or micro, because if you're being challenged by a therapist or counselor or anyone else with a professional background in trauma informed professional, like it makes you more susceptible to changing your thought patterns. So when you're under the influence of psilocybin at a micro level, you're not walking around and you are in an altered state of consciousness. It's just, if you look at the brain scans when you take in psilocybin, it activates pretty much all of your brain in different parts throughout that experience when the psilocybin is active in your body and mind. So then clearly, if you're conversing with someone who's trying to help you, you can then access different parts of your memory or different parts of your emotional state, or maybe you could regulate quicker, which allows you to then grow a little bit quicker in that session. Or maybe you talk about something which you thought you'd never talk about in a session, something you were embarrassed of or ashamed of or felt guilt over. But then the microdosing or macrodosing gives you that realization that the only person you're keeping secrets from is yourself, really, if you're not being honest with yourself. Like, it's better out than in. It gives you that permission to really heal. It does. And I use heal in a context of like, you feel better about yourself when you're by yourself.
I think it was it Leibniz who said one of the big problems of humanity is people can't sit in a room by themselves and just sit there, and being at peace with yourself is an important thing. And I was talking to you about like Carl Jung and archetypes, where you've got this shadow world. And from what you've just said and from some of the studies you've sent me, and I've put a few links in the podcast notes about the like lion's mane and psilocybin have been known to reduce the damage of dementia and improve the treatment of dementia. You've talked about end-of-life treatment. We know that these things can give people courage, empathy to deal with PTSD. It activates parts of the brain not normally used, as you said. It helps people to reduce the impact of the amygdala, the fight or flight response, to go to places where they may fear to tread. We know that there's long-term benefits as well in studies to do with brain flexibility and connectedness, and it eases depression, psilocybin. And we also know that it has a similar impact to antidepressants after 12 weeks of treatment. And for me, there's a lot there which we can use. And you can say to someone, take antipsychotics and antidepressants forever, or particularly people who don't respond to treatment. There's been lots of studies into the use of MDMA, ketamine, other drugs, including psilocybin, where if someone hasn't responded to treatment, these can make a breakthrough, particularly with people with a military background. But the science is there, the studies are being done. It might take a while to filter back in, but this is staring us in the face. This needs to become more mainstream, if anything, to help this unbelievable mental health crisis, which seems to be sweeping through particularly Western societies. I don't know, because of that lack of connection. But what these plants seem to offer is real breakthroughs in how we live our day-to-day lives. And I just can't believe we haven't heard more about it, to be honest. I mean, I've heard a lot of this through the newspaper. I picked up a few articles about it, and I've heard on podcasts like Sam Harris, even Jordan Peterson talks about it. This stuff needs to be more mainstream. And,
Yeah.
From what you said and from what my research has indicated, this needs to be mainstream, doesn't it? It needs to be a big part of medicine moving forward.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's like I heard someone say about trusting the science, and science is just like a tape measure.
Yeah.
So that's all it is, really. It's just a way of measuring something, and it's better to get an average medium of measurement by everyone measuring something, and then you get like a collective ideology of what that outcome is, rather than one person going, you know what, I measured this, it's 100% this. This is what it looks like. When science is about encouraging someone to challenge that person and be like, you know what, I'm going to measure it myself and see what the outcome is. And then they compare both them studies, and that's where the learning is. Because at my point of view and the other person's point of view, when they're looking through a way of measurement can create different outcomes and maybe fluctuations in the results, or maybe just a complete different testimonial. Like if you talk a medicine, and you can't, what that person will say after that medicine will be different to another person. So it's almost just, is it positive? Yes. That's like let's say yes is tick box, isn't it? Science can be almost sometimes a comfort blanket for some people, or it can scare some people, and they just have to understand science is a process that people go through to learn something more about something that they're trying to measure or understand. And I think what's happening now is people are like, whoa, this is science, as if it's just one outcome, or or science is permanent in a sense of permanence. The hypothesis is just a permanent hypothesis around, oh, actually, like someone took this much acid and died. Well, that's just natural with anything. If I took 100 paracetamols, something's going to happen to me. This is not positive, because there's benefits and consequences with everything in life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read as well, one of the things that interested me about psychedelics is the fact that they're non-addictive. I've had a lot of people say, oh, you want to watch all that? And you go, well, they're non-addictive. So are you taking antidepressants and antipsychotics and all this stuff? These are non-addictive, and they're another route which can have much, much better outcomes. Yeah. A lot of people have this idea that science is like some kind of objective obelisk, but in fact, it is a process. And it's what you might call an open belief system, in terms of it does accept changes and it will develop. You get new paradigms, and there's a falsifiability and a progress to it. And if you look at science 100 years ago and today, it's completely different. And science does incorporate all this stuff, and that's part of the strength of this, is that there is a lot of quantitative evidence, and also as more people become involved, there'll be more qualitative and self-reporting for people talking about the benefits of these things moving forward. If someone is already on medication for, say, mental health treatment, would you advise them to be off them before trying psychedelics? Or what's the kind of situation with that?
I'd 100% advise anyone to speak to the physician who prescribed the medication. Just say, look, my intention is to heal homeopathically. Probably wouldn't go down that well knowing the medical industry, but at least then you're just showing your intention to like lower your dosage and then come off completely, or maybe that's not even manageable for some people. So I would encourage people to like look at the different areas of plant medicines, because maybe there would be an open door for you to work with. Maybe like, for example, working with some sort of plant medicine would be beneficial, or there can be some science around that or some experience. I can't speak personally, but you may be able to work with some, like the San Pedro cactus. Maybe you could work with that, or like MDMA, that's coming into the limelight. And that's a plant medicine because it's from a tree bark. Psilocybin, the research says don't work with that if you're on antidepressants. But then again, this whole conversation could be null and void tomorrow if someone does new studies on it. Do you know what I mean?
But it's like anything. Before you do anything, you take advice and you take precautions, isn't it? It's not like it's unusual in that regard. But what you're saying is you need to speak to people, you need to speak to doctors, physicians, and then ideally with groups, or I don't want to use the word psychonauts, but there's this idea that these people who try all this stuff, and they call them psychonauts, don't they? People are going on these mental journeys, but that makes it sound a little bit over the top, I think. But it's basically about working with people who've got experience and give you proper advice. And with macro dosing, I think it's important to be with other people when you're doing that in the correct environment. That's right as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's good to be held in a space. So I would consider myself a space holder. So working with people who are taking different plant medicines and helping them. Just it's like a safeguarding. Like you're not there to guide their spiritual journey or a medicinal journey or healing journey, whichever, like whatever phrase you want to put before the reason why you're doing plant medicines or any psychedelics. Could purely just be for recreation. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, I would say that being supported through that is important, because then you could feel safer yourself, which is important, because when we feel safe, we feel relaxed. When we feel relaxed, we have better experiences in life, really. Like how often have I felt good about being in danger? Do you know what I mean? I think as many times, really, if any. So if I felt safe, I'd be able to relax and be comfortable and just allow the medicine to work. And that's what it is, really. It's a state of acceptance, to be like, this does actually benefit me. What I'm seeing and what I'm perceiving is different to what I'm used to, because I'm essentially having hallucinations, maybe, or perceiving things differently. And it's just about like absorbing that and realizing that reality is just a point of view. And that point of view can be altered based on whatever you put inside your body. It can even be down to, if I eat terrible diet, I'm going to feel a certain way, and I could see things in a more negative light. And if I eat a really, really good, nutritious diet, then I could perceive things in a much better light and feel better about things. It's just it's the same, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned before that you went to, was it Alcoholics Anonymous, and you've had issues with addiction. You have PTSD as a result of, your background in the military, etc. Did you find how did you go down this path? How did you find out about it? And obviously you've spoken that through personal experience, you've really helped, but how did previous treatments not work for you in terms of your addiction and your PTSD?
Initially, when you're diagnosed with and a diagnosis is just you meet a set of symptoms on a screen, basically. So this guy is depressed, anxious, he's got anger issues, all these things, nightmares, flashbacks, tick. There we are. He's got PTSD. But what that really means is you've got pain. You're suffering pain and trauma inside you. So I tend to just try and say to people, I know you've been diagnosed with this, but really, you've got something that's in your past which is currently either hidden or suppressed by your brain because it's too traumatic, or it's just an experience, really, that you haven't dealt with yet. So then when you start taking medication, I can't remember what I was on. I think I was on like metazapram or something, some sort of like antipsychotic, and sertraline, maybe a few different ones anyway. All that does is like shut down the emotional centers. And maybe I'm wrong. What that did for me is make me feel more numb. I can't really say what it does as a medication unless I have the pamphlet in front of me, but I guess it affects everyone in different ways. So for me, it made my situation a bit more difficult because I wasn't regulating my emotions. I wasn't getting outdoors as much because I felt fatigued and groggy and tired all the time. So I was lacking that connection then with the outdoors, lacking the sunlight, wasn't feeding myself with good food because I felt, I was drugged up basically with pharmaceuticals. My drug addiction and alcoholism took me into a rehab environment, which really changed my perspective on life then. And you know what? The first thing that I did when I was in rehab was watch a lot of self-help videos on YouTube, and some of the ones are quite hypey. Like they're like, you can change your life, you can do this, you can do this. And I found Joe Dispenza.
Mm.
You're aware of Joe
Yeah, I
Dispenza. I
know
found him.
Judge Spencer.
And David Goggins. And David Goggins is like not he's not like everyone's cup of tea, but
Mm.
because I'm military background, and he talks about being motivated, and talks about having a mission, talks about like doing things if you don't feel like doing them. I did feel like that's why it appealed to me at the time. I thought, I'm not going to take these meds anymore, because I was actually still on the meds when I was in rehab. And I was like, just thought, these people are outwardly presenting different ways of living. So Joe Dispenza was talking about meditation, and he scientifically backs up all his meditation retreats, and they map their brain scans and measure people's feelings before and after. And I think that's the most powerful for me. If you measure someone's how they feel before and then measure how they feel after something, and it's better, as long as they've not had a couple of pints, do you know what I mean? And they're just feeling temporarily happy. If it's like some like long lasting permanence there, and I think there's something that people should really listen to, and not think, oh, I need a chart or I need a set of Excel documents to really like believe in this experience. Because I know a lot of
Mm.
people would say near death experiences, that's not true. I'm just like, well, truth is based on what people see in their imagination, or hear in their day, or believe, or not believe, even know. If someone has an experience like from psychedelics, and then they know something through that, whether it's they seen something in their mind, which is like, that's 100% true. I seen like a god or a goddess, or I seen my grandfather and we were talking, and my
Mm.
grandfather's passed away. Who, like, no one can take that away from you as being
Mm.
a lie or a truth. All they can do is compare it to where they are in their life and think, I can't think that's a truth, to be honest.
Mm.
And then AA really solidified my connection with God, and it does. It's not a religious program, but it's a spiritual program, and it teaches you about looking at yourself, introspection. So in the program, it talks about daily prayer, and all that is really it's daily affirmations. I wake up, I say thank you, thanks for today. Thank you is one of the most powerful words you can use in this life. And if you go from saying I hate myself to thank you every day, what we say is what we are. When God created the world, he created the word, and the word was God. And that translates into our reality. So what you say
Mm.
demonstrates who you are, doesn't it? And demonstrates your life. Um, and that slowly allowed me to learn about how powerful what you think and feel is, and what you say, and how they are directly correlated with each other. Because how you feel usually translates that what you say out loud, and what you say about other people or say about yourself. So when you generally think good things about yourself, you usually say good things about yourself as well.
Mm.
So AA was so powerful for me to be humble, because I got on my knees and prayed every day, because I was in a state of lack, and I wanted to connect with something spiritual, which I did, and I got that spiritual connection, which I call God. Some people call the spirit, great spirit, but it's all different names for whatever people feel called to that in a spiritual way. It also allowed me to look at my past in a healthy way, supported by someone else, and look at people I've hurt, and then apologize to certain people, and some people you don't apologize to because it maybe cause them harm
Yeah, yeah.
or cause other people harm. And then it's almost, I call the step work a stairway to an elevated state of mind or consciousness, because you get out your own way every day. You're saying like thanks and giving thanks and saying out loud, or giving prayers. Ritualistic behavior, which is based on the tribes, based on the indigenous people. They're all it's ritual behavior, in it. They're all like doing things in a ritualistic manner, giving thanks for their food, water, everything, and you're doing the same, really, but based on the fact that you're recovering from alcoholism or addiction. And then through that journey, the more I sort of felt, the more I was connected to myself and to spirituality, the more I felt empowered then to have the confidence to trust myself. And trusting myself led me to psychedelics, and led me to learn more about my own nature and my own belief systems and my own knowings. And I feel like that in recovery and in certain recovery groups, they would say we don't take mind altering substances, but I needed my mind altered. So when I was talking about mind-altering substances, I'm talking about life-shifting substances like psilocybin, like ayahuasca. They're life shifters. They alter your mind, they alter your life. The problem is with mind. So I'm in these recovery groups to change my mind. So almost the AA program is a mind-altering
Mm.
material. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I've got like my if it weren't for AA, yeah, I wouldn't have had a foundation of spirituality and prayer and this foundational knowledge, which I think it's the basics really. I think a lot of people I think are suffering from a lack of connection, and that's through the lack of, I think, belief in anything other than the material world.
Mm.
And when you have a sense of awe and wanderlust in nature and spirituality, then it deepens and your experience based on nothing material. So almost materialism becomes less valuable to you, and other human beings become more valuable. It's a lot
That,
to there's a lot to unpack there, innit? But
yeah, yeah.
I value recovery groups. They got me to where I am now. I'd always recommend that plant medicines are not a magic bullet. What is a magic bullet is every single day working towards where you want to be and working on who you are and working on your health and well-being. That's the magic bullet. Daily work, daily integration, daily honesty, daily practices, because life is just a practice, and how you practice it determines your level that you're gonna come out to the top
Yeah,
wherever you end up. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. That was very powerful. That made that last few minutes of you speaking there, and I think that I haven't spoken about this with many people, but when I was really ill, when I was mentally, physically unwell in 2007, I used to wake up in the morning, and the only thing that allowed me to cope was to believe in a higher purpose and a higher power. And I understand why I have that as their first thing to say, if you come through that door, I don't care whether you've just had 15 bottles of whiskey the day before. I don't care what you've done the day before, the horrible places you've been. We start now, and there's something bigger than you. And until you've been there, I think it's hard to explain that to other people. I mean, I was talking to you and about Christ consciousness, and I've spoken to other people on this, like Kev Morris. We both did Kev's Reiki courses and that, about being spiritual but not being religious,
Mm.
about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater of narrative religions of the past, and saying there's a sense of awe and wonder implicit in daily life that we often don't see. And when you access it, it's beautiful. When people go, "Oh yeah, we should do this more often," and you go back to the lives and all that. But the AA program, I did a podcast on AA. I think the program is absolutely brilliant, and yet it might not work for everyone, but it's not designed to work for everyone in exactly that way. It's about
Mm.
giving you some tools that you can then take on, and
Yeah.
as you say, as part of your kind of healing, as it were. But I think that was beautiful the way you just expressed that. There, that what we go through, we get better. The ways that we find to deal with it, we learn, we take the best things, and we never give up that work of trying to make ourselves better. And, if anything, that's the ultimate meaning of life, isn't it? It's about making each day mean something, and then saying we're moving forward to other things as well. So
Yeah.
very, very powerful, mate. And, that
Thank you.
it's a great story that you've got. But the whole thing with psychedelics is there is still a big taboo, and that it's becoming more and more mainstream. But that there are huge benefits potentially for people with this, and I think that your experience highlights it. Are you still on those medications that you're on, by the way? For
No, I haven't been on any pharmaceutical medication since 2018, I think, for anything at all. But I am replaced
that's
that with homeopathic medicine. I went through my sobriety journey and through AA like without touching
yeah,
anything other than fresh air and water, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
And then the only way I had the confidence to move outside of the recovery circles is because I stopped asking other people for advice and for consultancy. I consoled in myself and my gut and heart space and thought, you know what? do I believe in psychedelic therapy and plant therapy? Do I feel that it will benefit me in a positive way? And I said to myself, yes. Do I feel like AA or CA will resist this ideology? Yes, I do. Do I then belong in AA or CA? No, I don't. Was it hard for me to leave? Yes, because one, AA is full of people who want to help themselves, and I loved being around people who, for one, talk about God. Two, don't judge other people, like other people's thought about God. And three, it's a social environment. So I really enjoyed that element of it. And I still have like people my friends who were in AA. So it was difficult for me to leave that. But you know what? I didn't have the fear of leaving it and then ended up back on the drink or the drugs, which was beautiful, really. So I thought, you know what? I feel like this is answering my question. Am I scared to leave this? I guess if you're scared to leave anything, I think maybe you need to work on a little bit of connection with God or work on your faith, because having faith is being fearless in your faith. It's having an understanding or a knowing, not a belief, that you are going to be okay, and whatever decision you make next is the correct one. And then when you make them decisions from gut level or heart level, like if I put my hand on my chest and thought, you know what, is this right for me? Is this right for me? No matter what everyone else says, because other people can talk from their point of fear, not their point of view. Because if I said to my sponsor, you know, I'm going to leave AA and take psychedelics, they'd be like, I don't think that's a good idea. And maybe it's not for some people because it's not the magic bullet. But I wasn't doing it to try and solve my alcoholism or addiction because it already was gone. It wasn't there anymore. I wasn't showing up as an alcoholic or an addict because I wasn't taking anything. My only thing that I was using every day was the tools I learned from rehab and from recovery, and that helped me with my symptoms of addiction and alcoholism. And today I can say I don't believe that addiction is a disease. I believe it's just a state of being, which you are able to shift out of. But depending how you get to that place is down to your journey. You know, there's no one size fits all methodology to help someone remove that pain from themselves, which keeps activating their need to numb themselves with a substance or with a drink. And my love and my compassion goes out to people who think differently, because I used to be that person who thought, you know what, I'm an addict, I'm diseased. And if you think like that and you are in recovery and you feel happy, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with thinking or feeling any way or anything, as long as you are content with your life. And I just want people to know that I'm not judging it or challenging anyone's recovery. I'm just saying how I did it. And I'm also saying that it's not magic. It's no magic way out. The way out is through a higher purpose and deeper sense of fulfillment with life, created by you every single day in moments of nothingness, essentially. When you just sit there and think, you know what, just glad to be here. I'm just glad to be here, and just smiling at yourself. And if you can't get to that place, it's okay, because this is the journey. And listen to yourself is probably the best way to get to that space, because as humans, we always gravitate towards the good things in life. And we're trying to help ourselves subconsciously and consciously to get to that next little goalpost, that next little service position in life, you know, because we all really naturally service givers. We all want to help other people. That's our natural state. Joe, if you see someone fall over in the street, what's your natural reaction? I'm going to help that person. That's instinctual reaction. That's because we are people of service. And I truly believe that.
Absolutely beautifully put. I think the other thing as well, just going back to what you said, when you speak to yourself, you're often quite critical, aren't you? But I've seen people in difficult positions and I've said to them, everything's going to be all right, you know, and I've meant it.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of them look at me and go, you can't say that because you don't know what I'm going through. And when I look at them and say that, I kind of know that but I still mean it, what I said, and I still think it's ultimately true. And that also is an act of faith. But then when you turn the lens on yourself, it can be hard. And I think being able to speak to yourself properly each day and to be grateful, etc., and to be honest, I think that's true enlightenment, isn't it? It's what we need to do in whatever way we do it. So, I mean, the interesting thing is you haven't even mentioned psychedelics there for the past few minutes. But that's just a part of it. You know what I mean? That there's bigger things. Obviously, you can't say, right, I'm going to take these psychedelics and everything's going to be great. No, it's about a journey of recovery and a journey of ultimately meaning and fulfillment day to day. And what more beautiful aim is there in life than that?
Yeah. And when you said there about saying to someone, or it's going to be okay, some people can't connect to that because it's scary being able to comfort themselves. So when almost someone says, it's going to be okay, they almost drop everything that they could be identifying with at that time. So they're like, oh, actually it is. And then maybe they were going through something challenging, and that was like sort of their whole purpose at the time, to survive from something. And then if they were like, it's going to be okay, then some people lose their little bit of their identity then, because they're not the fighter anymore. They're not the survivor or this and that. You become more just like a normal sort of, your existence becomes a little more normal, and that can be challenging for people because they're like, hang on a minute, I'm not fighting every day. I'm not trying to survive every day. I'm not in pain every day. I'm not ill now. I haven't got an illness anymore. My grief is gone. I'm not grieving. I'm not a grieving widow. Or it's like these shifts can be so profound for people. They think, who am I if I'm not like struggling, or if I'm not fighting for something, or if I'm not this, like essentially, who am I? So when people hear other people say, it's going to be okay, they're like, they are just thinking, imagine I could say that to myself. Imagine how powerful that would be if I feel this fear and I'm like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's just the challenge for some people. Listening to it is just something they can't they can't consider saying to themselves. And a lot of people, when you go through things, will say things that you should say to yourself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then I find a lot of people in life will suggest things to me which I should maybe say or do, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually something I need to hear. And I just heard it through you rather than me suggesting it to myself as an
Yeah.
action. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny when you hear something as well. Sometimes you hear something, you go, wow, I was meant to hear that. Because sometimes I'll be speaking to someone with the best of intentions and I'm thinking, they're not listening to me. They can hear what I'm saying, but they're not listening. It's just they're on a different frequency. And that isn't me being better than them. It's just that's where they're at. And that's another wisdom in life, isn't it? Like people have got to be ready for things. And I mean, which isn't to say that there aren't external situations. I mean, I'm a school teacher and I get so frustrated with some of the aspects of the education system because I think it's I've got to watch what I'm saying here, but I feel like a lot of people are let down by that. And, the health system, my aunt's her experiences in hospital recently, she died fairly recently, my aunt, and some of the things she went through towards the end were awful. External things do happen, but when things come along that can improve your life, if you're open to them and they resonate with you and it feels right for you, as you said, there's a lot of instinct there, isn't there? Sometimes, like you can hear a message from someone, and the person next to you doesn't touch them, and you hear it and go, "Wow, that's profound." That,
Yeah.
and it's about taking that forward.
It's like you just one more thing. It's like when say now me and you saw a bird of prey in the sky and we both witnessing it and we both watching it. Someone could really connect with that sense of flight in the bird, and just like Joe, like a predatory bird, they've got a sense of they're majestic animals and they just like soaring through the sky with such wisdom about them. You know what I mean? Someone could have a deep experience from that to connect with that bird, and someone could just be like, oh, there's a bird up there. Do you know what I mean? It's like people have got different levels of perception where that bird could be linked to something that happened to them in the past. Maybe like someone in the family is like really orientated around birds of prey, or something happened when their childhood where they went bird watching and they saw something, and then it invokes a memory of them and family on a school trip, and you're just in there, and there's two people in the same space looking at the same bird. One person's actually in a memory when they're 5 years old in school with his teacher or something now, and like a little look through the binoculars, and the other person's just listening to the wind in the trees and just saw the bird and not even acknowledging the bird really. Is more paying attention to like the whistling of the wind. And I guess that's how two different minds work, and that's how two different realities are. And everyone's different, isn't it? You can have 200 people looking at one thing, and everyone's like, you know what, this meant this meant this meant this. So it's almost when we then challenge each other's experiences, it's like think, why do we do that to everyone else? Everyone challenges each other's thought processes and realities and different things as if there should be one channel everyone's on. You know what? This is wrong. You should be listening to this radio station. Whereas everyone's really listening to their own music, and everyone's got their own song to sing. Everyone's got their own speech to make. No, it's just that's the beauty of life. Is people should not be the same. People aren't the same. People have got different walks of life, and people are not ready for stuff, and people are ready for stuff. But that state of readiness is non-existent, because that readiness is just someone witnessing you from a different state of being. It's great, isn't it, when you break it down and you have a look at different things? You're like, wow, it's just so simple but so philosophical how we complicate everything, and then we're like, oh my god, they're not ready for this, they're not ready for this, they're too this, and we're just creating all these words for someone who's just living their life basically in a different way too.
I mean, one of the big things I seem to be understanding as I get older is that keeping things simple is important. And there's two things I'm trying to like get my son to consider. He's only 3, but one is to appreciate or to see an awe and a beauty in things, and also based on I don't know if you've heard me podcast with Paul Cope. I've read Paul Cope's books about being a male growing up. He was crying this morning, and I said to him, "It's okay to be upset. I want him to be okay with his emotions. Emotions are fine. Don't suppress them, and see the beauty in the world around you, and just feel that awe and inspiration about life." And I feel like if I do that for him, I'll be setting him up a little bit better than maybe, the male world was for me when I was growing up. That you don't like. I remember like getting a book on Wales at school. I like military stuff and military history, like, you know what I mean. But I'm reading a book about the 100 Years' War. But I got a book on Wales, and this lad in my class got one on tanks, and all the lads in class saying his book's better than yours. You know what I mean? I remember at the time going, "Oh, I don't care," but that's part of the male issue, I think. And the other thing is, this emotional thing, lads don't cry. That doesn't help us in the long run. I think that's a negative to try and suppress emotion like that, as you said earlier as well, with the neck up kind of approach to military service, etc. But listen, mate, I think I could speak to you for a few more hours, but it's Saturday evening and it's tea time, so I'm sure you've got some ambitions to eat. I know I certainly have. So I'll let you go. But that was a phenomenal discussion. I really enjoyed it. We went down quite a few interesting paths there. But I think, just summing up, I think we're not advocating it, but people can research and find out about things. There are groups out there that people can get in contact with. Make sure you don't do anything without thinking carefully about things and speaking to the right people. I think that's what we would say as a general message. Is there anything else you want to share, or anything else you want to mention?
I think I was just thinking, how could I, what question, I guess, could I pose to someone listening to this, which would create a moment of introspection for them to maybe add value to something that's going on for them in life. And I think that my first question is that just imagine yourself, and just maybe get a pen and paper and just write down, put a stick man on there, and try and like put some boxes around, like, who are you as a person? What are you about? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you value? What's going on for you currently in life? And then, is there areas maybe you should write down that you wish to change? like anything really, whatever, just do it. Don't think too much about it. Just put the pen and paper and just go. And then are there areas that you want to change, but other people would challenge that change? And I think that would be important for me to mention, because I know a lot of people maybe are ready for change, but other people would not be accepting of that change, or it would cause some hassle maybe in their life. Maybe if someone wants to like leave their job or do different things, you know what I mean, which only lead to good things for them, but they fear the outcome because they don't know the result from other people. They don't know what's going to come forward from other people, and I just think that's powerful, really, because I think if we were just on our own on Earth, we would make every single decision that we wanted to, and we wouldn't think twice about it. It's just us and the animals, just me. It's just me in the world, and I just living in nature, doing whatever I wanted to. I would do every single thing that I thought about doing.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah.
But if it was like, but because of society and everything about our different belief systems, we need to understand our belief systems to crack them open and think, you know what, I'm scared to say that I want to do this or be this or experience this in life. And also make sure it's coming from a space of truth, as in the heart, usually. Because I know that my mind can tell me things which are untrue and maybe questionable. But then if I think, you know what, I need to close my eyes and think in the heart, is this right? And then have that little extra moment of thought. Well, that's not even thought, is it? But, thinking from the mind or the heart, I think this is the correct way. Still, it's feeling, in it, feeling.
Yeah.
And then you come up with an answer then. Sometimes they can be different. Sometimes they can be the same. It's completely down to the individual. Yeah. Yeah. Pen to paper, just start thinking about like where do you want to go? What needs to change for you to feel freer in life? And don't be scared. Don't fear the outcome, because once you do it, it's probably less intimidating than actual thought. Do you know what I mean? When it materializes in life, you're like, I don't even actually know why I was that scared of doing that.
Yeah. Right. I've just wrote that down. That task. I've done something similar to that, but I think, funnily enough, I was going to update me like kind of aims in life, my dreams, my ambitions, and I think I can tie some of that into it. So I'm due to do that this weekend. Alex, thank you so much for your time. This has been a really good discussion about psychedelics, but also about human meaning, human progress, and to be in control of your life. And I've been really inspired by it. So thank you very much. I know we've spoken before, but I think some of the stuff we've discussed there is very powerful, and it's been very helpful for me and hopefully to other listeners. And well done for all you've done. And thank you very much. Nice one.
You should put, if anyone wants to reach out to me, you could put my Instagram you could tag my like handle or whatever, even though there's nothing on my Instagram. It's just, if anyone needs to speak to me for anything I've said that's like pulled them in any way, they could speak to me like directly, and I can maybe help them with something, or they could help me with something, maybe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, we'll do that. Thanks very much. I'll stop the recording now, and then we'll just finish off and have a little chat.